Hello, welcome to another episode of the Chaplain's Den. Chaplain's Den is just a place where I take your everyday questions. A lot of people have sometimes complex questions, but a lot of the time I find it amazing that people just have little simple things that are on their mind about Christianity and their faith and religion in a whole. So I try to answer them in a way that's just simple and honest. There's always questions that we can, if you want to go much further into and in depth, there's a lot of resources. But I find, it's amazing that a lot of the time those resources have a ton of misinformation because they're able to, let me tell you why something is good in 12 ways. Well, maybe there's 12 positive things, but there could be one negative thing that completely outweighs those positives, right? Sometimes keeping it simple and straightforward is the best way for us to build off on something. So today's question is one that I get all the time. And the question is, as a Christian, is it all right for me to have a thing? Is it okay for Christians to have a thing? And I don't get that question per se, but what I get is it all right for me as a Christian to be into this? Is it all right as a Christian to be into that? Is it all right for me to have a hobby? Is it all right for me to have, a sport that I'm crazy about? Or, whatever it may be, whatever, a passion, whatever. And first I want to tell you, I want to tell you because so many people have hit this in the churches. And I want you to know where things come from, why they come from, and what they are. Because most of the time, sometimes people mean well. Sometimes people mean well. Most of the time in a church setting, where you're going to get this is from the hypocrite. And I'll tell you what they base it on. They base it on the fact that if your faith is strong enough, all you need is God. Are they wrong? They're not wrong. They're not wrong at all. But here's the thing. If your faith is strong enough, the vast majority of us, our faith is not there. We have faith that is growing. We learn to rely on God more and more all the time. But we're just not at the point. And you see even the apostles at the point where they often had side things, whether it was work that they did, that there was times that they returned to that, and especially when they're trying to deal with stuff. We see Peter go back to his fishing. We see Paul doing the tent making that he was doing. It's good sometimes to have other things. Now, I do want you to understand that is often an attack. It is trying to get you off kilter. They don't want people, hypocrites don't want people being happy. They don't want people being happy in the church. And they don't, the thing is, most of the time they have nothing. They don't have other things, but at the same time, they don't have the faith that they claim to have. A hypocrite would be happy if they were the only person in the church, because then they could be like, look, I'm the best person. Nobody else is as good as I am. Still, they'd be miserable because they don't have true faith. So they love obsessing. It reminds me of some of the Christians I remember in high school that were like, we don't go to these parties because of our faith and because of this. And you don't go to those parties because you're not invited. You're not a friendly, nice person. Your Christianity is a facade that you hide behind. This is why I'm not partaking. No, it's just that you're not pleasant to be around. So when we look at it, understand that sometimes it is absolutely an attack. Don't give up stuff just because somebody in the church is like, I don't think you should do that. And that includes sometimes clergy. Sometimes clergy have their own biases that if they've, I've known people that say, oh, I've never heard anything good about rock, so Christian rock can't be good. Well, I've never met somebody who's into rock who turns down Christian rock, who says, I know it's not good, and even Christian rock isn't good. It's usually the bias, you know. I remember Deacon that was like, there's no message in Christian rock. And so I incorporated one into one of my sermons just to kind of show him that, you know, there's one that was really in depth. And it was like 2 weeks later, he makes the same comment. You know, that type of music doesn't have any message, doesn't have any teaching. So anyway, bottom line, I'll tell you as a chaplain, one of the things about Christianity, you want to get it right because it doesn't change. And people say, well, why would you want a God that doesn't change? Because when you're right, you're right. And we live in a world that society is constantly changing. So there's a time where people use the whole, you know, you put your toys away and you put your fun away, and you should be work focused and focused and focused and focused, and everything should be driving forward and success and success and success. And you see how people burn themselves out, and they might find that success level, but they're miserable, absolutely miserable. We know now in a mental health setting that whether people are just getting through day-to-day life, or if they're dealing with trauma or whatever is really negative in their life, having something can make a huge difference. You look at things like hobbies, art is a huge one. If you play music, play an instrument, if you're a fan of sports, that can be great. If you play sports, that can be great. There's so much that what it does is it allows us to focus on something else other than the negative, because so much of the time it's so hard for us to not focus on the negative. So having something like that, yeah, it can be absolutely huge. And you see a lot of clergy that are the same, that they have a collection of this, or they're into this. You know, it could be anything from I don't know, a sports card collection. They could be into model trains. They could be into archery. They could be into painting. They could be into certain types of music. Whatever it might be, a lot of the time that's the case, that they have, they just have one thing that you enjoy. And, you know, people might say I'm wrong. People might say, oh, you know, if it's worldly, but all our gifts and all our attributes come from God. And there's things that we just naturally enjoy. You know, people can't explain what is it about. So many of us have like that song that we heard, that song that's just boom, that's like our song, right? You know, as soon as you hear a certain band or there's some activity that you do that, you know, there's a lot of people that have done multiple sports through their life. They hit one and it just does something for them. There's just something about it. They really, really thoroughly enjoy it. And I think that's a good thing. I really do. I've known, so I can think of so many friends who were told, you know, you shouldn't do this in church, or, you know, if you go to church, you shouldn't play. There's instruments you shouldn't play. There's music you shouldn't play. There's things that you shouldn't be into. I think you have to look at it openly and honestly. Are you, you know, somebody was asking me once about like horror movies, and I was telling them, I you know, honestly, a lot of the time Christians will tell you that they become resensitized to things as you care more about people and become more empathetic. Then what happens is you don't want to see anybody suffering. Your mind is no longer just like, oh, I know it's fake. So there's some things like that, and some people might say that I'm wrong, but I think there's some things like that you can look at and say, yeah, that's not good for me to be taken in. There's so much on social media right now. It's not good for you to be taken in. There's so much, you know, false stuff in the news and everything else. It's not good for you to be taken in. And then there's some things like if you sketch, I mean, you find something to sketch, and it's amazing how people just get lost for, you know, a half hour or more sometimes doing something like that. I know people that, do very elaborate sketching. I know some people that just have like that notebook that they pull out if they're watching TV or something, and it's just all doodles. It's just all kind of silly fun, right? So whatever it is, if you have a thing and that helps you with life, if you question it, absolutely feel free to pray about it and say, is this something that's good for me or bad for me? But definitely don't give up on something just because, look at people in the church. Are there people that are doing stuff and they're happy in life and they have their own thing? Or are you being told what to do by somebody that's just miserable all the time, right? I mean, you have to be careful where you're getting your sources from. So whatever it is that, and if you don't have a thing, find your thing. Get out. I've been always kind of blessed that I've known what I've been interested in. I have to try to cut down on things, right? Kind of have like a favorite sport as opposed to doing all these different sports or watching all these different sports, because you can waste so much time doing it. So I have to kind of focus on what my key things are going to be. But some people have a hard time knowing. Some people have a gift of knowing what everybody else likes, but they don't know what they like. So try to find what you like. Try to find what you're into. And yeah, you don't have to have 150,000 things, but if you have one thing that, makes some of your days easier, by all means. I don't see, I'm not saying to, if you can make your devotions, your Bible time, all that part of the positivity of your day, that's absolutely great. And if you can find time to do, sometimes people find, things that mix together. I know when I was in school, there were some of us that we'd go to watch the harness racing, and some people don't think that's good because people gamble on it. Well, we're not gambling on it. But we could actually, in between the races, I mean, you can talk and have fun. But sometimes people go and they go by themselves and they read their Bible or study between the races, right? So however you do stuff, don't worry. When people tell you stuff, take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. If you doubt it, pray about it. If you think it's something that helps you and you don't see a negative of it, by all means, feel free to enjoy it. So that's the message for today. I hope that helps. God bless on your journey, and keep you in prayer.